Hi friends, welcome to another video of Mule for Learn from D. Today we will talk about proxy and load balancing. So the role of proxy, if we think, is if you think the actual role of proxy server, that is like we hide the actual URL, I mean the service URL, and also it provides an extra layer of security, right? Now if we talk about load balancing, so load balancing refers to the concept where we actually distribute the load uh, to uh, to a particular service, or let's say we have deployed the same service in different servers, and then we based on the load, based on the incoming load, we want to distribute that load to different servers, right? So here also today will we will see the similar concept. However, we will try to demonstrate it by just a single service, but we will deploy the same service in different port. Okay, so if you see here in this picture, I have tried to use these are the components. So postman, we will use postman to send the request, and we will use Apache HTTP server for proxy and load balancing. And then if you see, this is the request URL which we will use in our postman, and then uh, at the back end, it will actually hit this service, right? So that is my service version 1 test. So that means if you see, the actual service URL is hidden here. So that is the role of proxy. So sometime we might be having some requirement where we don't want to expose the actual service URL to the outside world. So in that case, the proxy server comes into picture. And also if we want to apply some IP filtering, IP whitelisting, then some extra layer of security, let's say we want to apply some policy, so similar things we can apply on top of the proxy server. So by doing that, we actually reduce the load of actual application server where our actual service is running. That means in this case, our actual application server, we can think of MuleSoft standalone runtime server, because our actual service, which is Mule service, that is running inside MuleSoft standalone runtime server, right? So for proxy as well as load balancing, for both the implementation, we are going to use the Apache HTTP server. So for doing that, first we need to download the Apache HTTPD file. So if you see, this is the link where from you can actually download the Apache HTTPD server. So current version, it is showing up as 2.4.54. So for now we are going to use Win64 version. So for the demonstration purpose, I have already downloaded this one. So what I will do is, I will just extract this, and then we will try to see what are the configurations required to configure the proxy server using Apache HTTP. Okay, so I'll just select extract, and once I select that, so this is the folder you will get. So now I will go inside this Apache 24, and then we need to go to config folder. Okay, so we need to go to config folder, and we will require to update this httpd.config, this particular file we need to update. But before that, what we would like to do is we will create our Mule sub service. So that is this one. We want to create a service and we will try to run the same service. The service we will provide the same response, but we will try to run the same kind of service in different ports. Okay, so these are two mules of service which we want to run in the mules of standalone runtime server. So to make it very simple, what we will do is we will create one application and we will try to create the two listeners we will try to use in the same application, and then we will just put the port number different, and the path and everything, the internal logic, everything would be same. Okay, so let's do that. So DigiWorld, let's say proxy balancing version 1. Okay, so this is the name I'm giving to my new Mule project. We are using Mule runtime server 4.4.0. so our Mule project got created. Now what we will do is we will go to HTTP and we will bring a listener from the palette, and in this, okay, so if you see this is the flow that is load balancing flow 1, and then similarly we will try to create another listener, and that will be having version 1 flow 1. So we will try to name it as flow 1, this first one, and then the second one we will try to make it as flow 2. Okay, so that is it. Now what we want to do is we will try to create the configuration. So we will just use the as is 8081 is the port for this listener. So if you see, this is the listener, and then what is our path? Our path is my service version 1 test, right? So the localhost and 8081, this will come from the listener configuration, and this is the path we will use. So my service slash version 1 slash test. So let's go to our Anypoint Studio, and here we will provide my service version 1 and then test. Okay, so by doing that, this listener configuration is complete. So similarly we will try to do the same, but in this case we won't use the HTTP listener config because this one is referring to port 8081, and if you if you see this thing, the way we are trying to implement, we are trying to implement the same path, right? If you see, this is also my service version 1 test and this is also my service version 1 test, but only the difference is port number. So because if we want to use a different port number, we definitely need to create another listener. Okay, so and in this case we will use 8082. So the listener config 1 we are using. Now similarly we will for the path we will take the same and we will try to make it here. Okay, so now if you see, we have two flows with two listeners, and the first one is listening on port number 8081 and the second one is listening on port number 8082, right? So what we will do now is we will place a set payload, and there we'll just try to give this flow name as the response. Okay, so that is what we will do. So this one we will just disable this fx and then we will just make it as hard coded. So set payload, we will just make it like this. Similarly we will again put a set payload here, and again we will disable this fx and then we'll put, but in this case it should be flow 2 because this is the flow 2, right? So with that, our application is now ready. So what we will want to do is we'll just run this DigiWorld proxy load balancing version 1. This project we are running. So once it is deployed, we will try to first access the service using Postman with the MuleSoft specific service URL. So we will try to send a request to this one, this HTTP localhost, this one, and then we will try to send it, and we will check if we are getting correct response or not. Okay, so once this is successful, then we will try to configure our Apache HTTP server for proxy and load balancing. So first we will try to configure the proxy, and then once the proxy configuration is working, then we will try to configure the load balancer. Okay, so let's check. So as you see, our application is now deployed. So now what we will do is from the Postman, so this is how the Postman looks like, and in this I'm creating a collection and I will call it as proxy and load balancing, and inside this I'll just create a request, and there I will mention this is http :// localhost 8081, then my service v1 test, right? What was the URL? Okay, so my service v1 test was the URL. Okay, so v1 and then test. Okay, so our application is already running, and we know that this first listener is listening on 8081 and the second listener is listening on 8082, right? So we'll send the request, and if you see, we are getting the response. So similarly, so this is for, I'll say this is for flow 1, right? The request is for flow 1. So what I will do is I'll save this one, and then I'll try to duplicate this. Right now this one I will say this is for flow 2. So if we go to flow 2, this one we need to just change it, the port, and then if we see the response is coming as flow 2, right? So the response is coming as flow 2. So that means our Mule subservice is working as expected, right? And because we haven't put any kind of logger here, and that's the reason we are not able to see anything in the Mule console. So better we will put some logger here. We'll use the logger. For that we need to go to here and we need to select logger. So in the logger I will just say that flow 1. So I'll say request received flow 1, right? Similarly I will put another logger here, and then I'll make it as request received flow 2. Okay, so now I will just save it, and as you know, automatically this should be deployed. So if you see, the application was deployed. Now I will clear this one, and again I'll send the first request, let's say, and I'm getting the success response. Now if I see, okay, so if you see we are getting log in the MuleSoft, right? Similarly, if I just send the request to flow 2, we will get another request, and this time it is flow 2, right? So this is actually replicating the real life scenario where we run the same application in different server, so that we can meet the requirement whenever there is huge load, huge amount of requests coming to a particular service, that time we want to distribute that load, and as part of distribution what we can do is we can deploy the same application in different instances of the server, and then we can use a load balancer to distribute the requests to different instances of that application, right? So here also we are trying to replicate that same scenario. So if you see, our application works the same way, however everything is same, however this this port number we have set it different. So now our application, we see that our MuleSoft application is ready, and now what we will do is so this part is done. For our case, this part is done. Now we want to configure the Apache HTTP server, right? So to do that, as we discussed earlier, I need to open this one. So I'll say open with, and then I'll say more apps, and then I'll use notepad. Okay, so once I do that, this is how the application, this one looks like. So the first thing what we need to change is this one. This is server root. So for our case, it is not C Apache, it is this path is not valid for our server, because our server is running at this location. So what I will do is I will just copy this, one, and I will paste it here. So I'll paste it here. If you see, define server root, and this is the path where actually we have extracted our this HTTPD zip file, and this is the path we need to provide here. So after this, I'll just save it. I'll save it. So this is the first configuration that you need to change, and then instead of this default one, for our case, if you see, our HTTP server link is, the proxy URL is localhost 9000. This is the port, right? So we need to configure our HTTPD config according to that. So what we will do is we will comment this next line, we will uncomment the first one, this listen part, and here we need to provide, we can provide localhost, and then the port number we need to use is 9000, right? So this is the second configuration that we need to do. So we'll just save it, and similarly we will go ahead, and if you see, there are different modules present, right? So to enable the proxy part, what we need to do is we need to go to the proxy section, if you see, and here here you will find this particular module, that is proxy modules, right? Proxy modules, this is the one that you need to uncomment. So once you do that, this module would be enabled for our HTTP server, for our Apache HTTP server. So this one we need modules proxy, and then module proxy we have enabled, and now we need to enable another module, that is proxy HTTP module. So this one, mod proxy HTTP, because we are willing to enable our proxy on HTTP URL, right? So this is the module we need to enable. So once we do that, then pretty much our proxy server should be enabled. So what we can do is we will just save this one. Now all the way towards the end, just scroll towards the end, and whatever we have there, we need to mention our proxy server link, right? So our proxy server link we need to provide. So what we can do is we need to provide this proxy server link and the backend service, right? So as per this link, our proxy server should be this one, and which should point to our actual service URL, right? So we want to hide the actual URL. So what we will do is, first of all, we need to write this proxy pass. So this is the format that we need to use, and we will mention, see, we will mention slash, and this part is tricky. Okay, so if you see in our this one, we have hello world version 1 test, but in our actual service URL there is no hello world. It is my service slash version 1 slash test, right? So what we can do is, we need to mention hello world here, hello world, and then we need to mention http colon slash slash, and this is going to be the actual service URL, which is localhost colon 8081, and then we will mention my service. We'll mention my service. So if you see in the proxy pass, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to use, so that means if in the proxy URL, if we mention hello world, that means slash hello world should be referring to this particular link, so the my service, right? So if you remember, we configured our proxy server host as localhost, and the port was 9000, and then if we place hello world, then this is how it should internally map this particular service URL, right? Now similarly, we need to put another line, that is proxy pass reverse, and same thing we need to provide there. Okay, so control C, and then we'll just mention this one. Okay, so with this we'll just save our httpd config file, and now we will go to our Apache HTTP server folder, and in this bin we need to go, and then from here we need to run the command, right? So once we do that, and this is the command line, it will open, and here what we will do is, we'll just type httpd, and then we will press enter. So once we do that, this is one warning that we are coming that it is giving, could not reliably determine the server's fully qualified domain name. So this is because we have used localhost, right? So don't worry, that won't be any problem. So if you see, our server is actually running. Now what we can do is, so we will keep this one running, and now we will go to Postman, and here we will try to duplicate this flow2 request, and then inside this we will try to rename this one as proxy URL, or we will just mention as proxy test. That would be the best thing. So we will mention proxy test, and this time we will mention the port number as the proxy server port, and instead of my service we will mention hello world. We'll mention hello world. So the later part, if you see, we have mentioned slash hello world to replace this part, right? So till this point it will replace. So the remaining part, that is version 1 test, that will be used. So once I put slash version 1 test here, so this slash version 1 test would be appended to this particular, at the end of this my service this link. So eventually what it will make, it will make http://localhost 8081 my service, then /v1/test, because we have provided v1 test here. So now let's send the request, and if we send it, and now if you see, we are able to get the reply, right? So how we are getting the reply? Because our, as per our http config, our proxy URL that we are using, that is internally calling our actual service. So by doing this, we have actually hidden the actual service URL. So if you see, our MuleSoft service URL was my service, but when we are using the proxy URL, this is the URL we will share with the client, and they will call the hello world version test, not the my service. So by doing that, we are actually hiding our actual service URL. So this is a layer of security that we have added to our MuleSoft services, right? And similarly, at the same time, this proxy, or the load for this proxy configuration and other thing, we are using in the HTTP servers, which is a different one. So that way we have reduced the load from our standalone runtime server. So it is like we are trying to utilize the full capacity of our MuleSoft standalone runtime server just for deploying, managing, and handling the requests for our MuleSoft applications. So we have externalized the security part here, and we want to apply our proxy related configuration load balancer that we have externalized to another server, that is Apache HTTP server, right? So till now we have implemented this part. So if you see, now http ://localhost 9000 is the port number, then hello world version 1 test. So if we provide this URL in our postman, then internally it is able to get the response from our this service, right? So why it is going to this service? Because we have provided the link as this one, right? We have mentioned 8081, right? So that is pretty much because we have used the 8081. That's the reason it is trying to get the response from this particular service. Okay, so that means so far we have implemented the proxy part. Now what about the load balancing? So when we talk about load balancing, then our requests should be distributed, right? Distributed to these two services. So let's say the first request, once we receive from the postman, the first request should go to the service which is running at 8081. Similarly, the second request from postman, the service should the request should be forwarded to the service that is deployed in the port number 8082. That is the thing we want to achieve. And here using the postman, we are sending the request. So here we are trying to replicate the scenario. We will think like the client is actually sending the request. That means in ideal scenario, what will happen is there would be enterprise applications, or let's say some web application would be there which will internally call the MuleSoft services. So this is how the configuration we can put to handle the requests. Okay, so now we will try to configure the load balancer. So for that also we will use the HTTPD server. So what I will do is I will try to stop this one. So you can directly click on this close button, and also you can click on this empty area and then just press Ctrl C. So once you press Ctrl C multiple times, this should actually stop it. So that is actually forcefully we are stopping the server. So for this case, because we are running in the local, so we can do this, but for actual project environment, there you need to be more careful, because forcefully shutting down the server could result to some inconsistency. Okay, so this is the one. Now we have stopped our HTTP server. Now again we will go to our this HTTPD configuration. In this one we will again go there, and there what we will do is we will try to configure the modules that are needed for our load balancing. Okay, so first of all, the module that is required is load balancer, this one, load balancer method by request. Okay, so let's check where is that load balancer by request. So this is the one, right? LB method. So this module we need for the load balancer by request, LB method by requests dot so this one we will enable, and then we need couple of more modules. So then we have the proxy module, and here if you see proxy balancer module, right? So the proxy balancer module we need to enable. So what we will do is proxy balancer module, will just try to uncomment this one. So this is the proxy balancer module, and then we need to use the slot mem shm. So this is the third module that we need to enable to use, I mean for our load balancer configuration. Okay, so that these are the three modules we need to enable. Okay, so now we are pretty much good from the module loading perspective. Now we will again go all the way towards the end. We'll scroll down, and here now we need to configure this such a way so that our proxy and our load balancer both works together. Okay, so to do that, what we need to do is we need to edit this httpd config. Okay, so before we actually put the load balancing configuration, we would like to save this one. Now if you see, there is no star. So whatever modules we have enabled, that one we have saved it now. Now we are providing the proxy, I mean the load balancer. Okay, load balancer configuration. So proxy balancer slash, we'll make it as AC, let's say, and then cluster, then we will make it as let's say hello world. We will make it as hello world. So this is the starting tag we will use, and then we will try to complete, I mean end this one. So this one should be proxy, and this one should be like this. Okay, so proxy balancer AC cluster hello world. So this is the name of the balancer we are trying to give, and now what we will do is we'll say balancer member. So what would be the balancer member? One service is running in port number 8081. So the first balancer would be http:// localhost 8081, and the second this one, and the second load balance, second member would be this one. Okay, so second member would be this one. Okay, so that way we will try to configure. So balancer member, and then we'll say http:// localhost:8081. This is what this is root 1. Similarly, we will just copy this one. So we'll mention 2 balancer member here. So if you have more than 2, then you can probably add them after this. So this is root 2. Okay, so proxy balancer we have mentioned here. Now there is another thing we need to mention, that is proxy set sticky session, and this is route ID. So using route ID it will try to do the balancing, okay, and using the session. So proxy set sticky session route ID, this is the thing we need to place it there. And now we have HTTP this one, and here instead of directly mentioning this one, so earlier for the proxy we are mentioning the actual service URL, so instead of mentioning that one we will now mention the name of the balancer. Okay, so that means now whatever request will come, that will come to this particular mapping, and from here it will actually go to this balancer. Okay, so it will go to this balancer. Now similarly we have HTTP this one, and now we will say another proxy reverse, and in this case this should be 8082. Okay, so now you have if you see this configuration, so once we send the request from postman with hello world, then it will go to this load balancer, which is this one, and here it will find two members. One member is running on port number 8081, another member is running on port number 8082. So these two routes are there. Now as part of that, if you see, we have provided these two proxy links, right? So this is how the load balancing should be done. Now we will just go to file and we will click on save, and now what we will do is we will again try to run our HTTP server. So we will just type httpd and then we'll press enter. So similarly that earlier warning is there, so don't worry about that because we are trying to do it in the local. So here now if you see the same service now, so what we will do is we'll try to duplicate this one, and this time okay, so first let me delete this one because I didn't save this proxy test. So first I will save it and then I will duplicate this. By doing that it will just copy the similar thing. So now what we will do is we will just rename this one as proxy and load balancing test. Okay, so that way we will name it, and then if we send this request, let's see what happens. So we'll send this request, and now this time okay, it says no listener for version 1 test. Okay, it says no listener for version 1 test, and it is giving 404 not found. Okay, that is okay. So now thing is that we have missed one configuration here. What we should do is here whenever this if you see from the load balancer, it is trying to map it to either this part or this part. So once we put something after the hello world, then what will happen is after the hello world we have mentioned version 1 test, right? So what it will do is once it goes to load balancer, then from the load balancer it is either mapping to this path or this path. So because we have version /version1 /test after our hello world, so it will try to map that after this 8081. So eventually how it will come out, it will come out like http://localhost 8081/v1/test. So that is actual URL it is making internally. So that is the reason it is not able to find our service. If you see, that request came here, so that is the reason we have got some response. But thing is that it is internally mapping such a way so that it is getting it is coming out as http://localhost, then after 8081 it is coming as version 1/test. So that is how it is coming. But if we see our service URL, it is not just after 8081, we have my service as well. It is not like this one after 8081 we have just this part. It is not like that, right? So that is the reason what we need to do is we need to put we need to correct our proxy pass here. So what we can do is we can just stop our service for now. This HTTP server we need to stop. So I'll just click on empty area and I'll click press Ctrl C. So now after pressing Ctrl C multiple times, it has just stopped the server. Now I will go to here and then I'll try to make it like this, my service. Okay, so this is how it should do. Okay, the proxy pass should also have the this thing, this my service / my service here. Okay, now we will save it and then we will again run the server. So httpd and then this one. So this time we will go here and then if we send the request, now if you see we are successfully getting the response. Okay, that is good, that is good. Now thing is that if you see we are getting the response from flow1, right? So now as per our load balancing, the first request should go to the service that is running on 8081, which is our flow1, and then the second request should go to the flow2 that is running on port number 8082, right? So let's see if it happens. So if we send the request, this is the one, then again we are sending the request. Oh, every time it is if you see every time it is giving the response as flow1. So that means our second URL is not working. Oh my god, so that is another issue. So what we will do is we will go to our this one and then it is using hello world, then localhost 8082 service, my service. Okay, that is fine. Now for flow2, let's check if our flow2 is returning correct result or not. So flow2, this is the actual MuleSoft service URL. This is giving correct response only. So now there is something wrong, right? So we need to correct it. Let's do that. Okay, so what we can do is because let us review this particular property. So this is the one, this is looking correct only. So we have correctly provided all these details. So let's retry one more time. So our HTTP server is already running. So if you see, this is the one, and this should work only because this is the required configuration that we need to do for the load balancing, and we have also enabled. Let us just check if we have enabled the correct modules. So this is the one that is needed. Then we have this one, HTTP proxy, that we have already, and this one mod proxy that was required for proxy balancer, this one for load balancing, and then we need this one, load balancing by request. This one we have enabled. Okay, and this should work. Okay, so let's do one thing, just let's retry. Probably internally that should work. Okay, so let's see. we have sent one request. Oh, this one, if you see this time it is coming as flow 2, right? So let's send another request, and this is flow 1, and then again flow 2. If I send another request, flow 1, then flow 2, flow 1. Okay, so if you see, this is now working fine. So somehow that time only the path 1 was it was using to forward the request to path 1, so that was this one, 8081. However, now we haven't done any change, so this is the existing configuration only. So we just waited for some time, and then once we retried, and now we are just reviewing our changes in the httpd config file. And now once we send the request, then if you see, this is now working perfectly, right? So our first request is going to this one, that is 8081, which is where the response is coming as flow 1, and the second request is going to flow 2, that is, I mean, this service that is running on 8082, and the response is coming as flow 2, right? So I'll send one request. So this time, see, it is taking it is giving us flow 1, now flow 2. If you again flow 1, then second request flow 2, third request flow 1, fourth request flow 2, fifth request flow 1, sixth request flow 2. So that means our, see, we are not changing the service URL or anything. So once we share this service URL with our client, or let's say from there is one web application from which they are going to call our MuleServer services, right? So let's say in place of this postman, we have a web application deployed to another server, and from there internally it is trying to call this particular service URL, which is this one. So first thing is, our Apache HTTP server is working as proxy, so that means our actual service URL is hidden, and this web application which will be there in case of postman, so that web application it will not have any idea like what exactly is going on internally once it sends the request to this server, because the web application won't be sending the request directly to our MuleSoft server, so it will send the request to our Apache HTTP server, which is acting as a proxy. So there we will put some level of security, and also we have hidden the service URL. Now the port number is also different, so that is a more secure way of exposing our service, right? And similarly, the in case our Apache HTTP server, if it is getting more requests from this web application, or let's say there is some sale running on, and then from this web application which is there, let's say for in place of postman we have that web application, and it is trying to send all those requests internally to our proxy server, and from there because the load is huge, and there are a huge amount of requests coming to this one, and because we have implemented the load balancing, and that's the reason our request would be distributed among these different services, so that way we would be able to deal with, I mean, we will be able to serve multiple requests, I mean a huge number of requests. Okay, so this is how we can use proxy and load balancing concept. We can utilize the advantage of those the advantage of proxy and load balancing using this approach. And here today we have just tried to implement this simple thing. So hope this is helpful. So if you like the video, if you are learning something new, then I would request, please do subscribe, do like the video. And also if you want me to prepare a video on any other topic, then just comment on the comment section. And that is it. So thank you so much for today, and see you with a new video on a new topic. Thank you.